meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the former US President Donald Trump in Washington has really set the stage for renewed discussions on trade, on defense, cooperation, also geopolitical alignment. Global markets, of course, are going to be very much on tenterhooks. Businesses are keenly watching as well. Policymakers weighing the diplomatic significance of all of it, and the big question remains, what has truly changed this time? Has this meeting unlocked new synergies, or is it more about optics than outcomes? So at a time when the US and India are navigating economic headwinds, shifting alliances, the significance of this discussion cannot be overstated. So are we seeing a fresh push this time for stronger economic times, a recalibration of strategic priorities, or is it just a reinforcement of existing commitments? What does it mean for the markets and trade policy and the road ahead for India's global positioning as well? We're learning from sources that a defense deal may be on the cards between the US and India. In fact, my colleague from the Times Network, Madhav Das, is joining us from Washington, D.C. to get us an exclusive piece of news that he's been tracking. Madhav Das, do tell us, from what you're hearing so far, what are the possibilities of a defense deal getting cracked?
Well, good morning from Washington, D.C. As you can see, in fact, all of Washington, D.C., a winter wonderland. The snow, of course, of the last 2 days that has been falling over here, making it extremely chilly this morning. But the meeting isn't expected to be quite as frosty, given the fact that the two leaders have a personal bonhomie, they have an equation, and clearly the areas of cooperation clearly are far bigger and more important than the areas where there are concerns right now. It's absolutely right that when it comes to tariff, Donald Trump has made a lot of noises and he has in fact threatened a lot. But when it comes down to the implementation, look at just what's happened in the case of Canada and Mexico. He's actually held it back. In the case of India as well, while India has made certain announcements where it has indicated that American goods would not be taxed or they would not have the kind of tariff that they had earlier, clearly it's an indication to Donald Trump in terms of what India's thinking is, and they do not want to get into a clear spat on this entire issue of tariffs right at the beginning of the Trump administration. But will that be enough? Remember that President Trump has asked for many more things. He also expects that FDI, for instance, is a two-way street. He wants Indian companies to invest in the United States and not just US companies investing in India. He wants more purchase as far as American products are concerned, including, of course, the important area of defense hardware. Now, how much of that will actually happen on ground, we don't know at the moment. There's also the very tricky issue of immigration, under which the Indian government, of course, has been under pressure from the opposition, domestically speaking. But it's also a fact that the United States has taken a position, in fact, President Trump taking that position in his entire election campaign. And so there is domestic pressure on him as well. So how all of these issues really play out remains to be seen. But the overriding factor is this, that India and United States have so much in common, not just in terms of their own strategic interest or their strategic partnership, common threats, for instance, that exist, whether it comes to trade, whether it comes to strategic affairs, and also the fact that the two countries have seen a huge amount and have gained a lot from, for instance, the Indian community that's present here in the United States, and that's contributed so much. And you see that reflected in not just the Trump administration, but also in the corporate sector here.
Well, Madhav, at this point in time, investors are getting a sleepless night on the possibility of the reciprocity of tariffs that Trump has put out in a cryptic post, and that on Truth Social. And of course, we are going to break this down with our panelists who are joining us, a distinguished panel. Market expert Ajay Bagga with us, former ambassador to the US and Germany. Meera Shankar also joins him, along with economist Arsh Mogre, who works with institutional equities for PL Capital over at Prabhudas Leeladhar. Thank you for making the time and joining us. Ajay Bagga, Trump has announced reciprocal tariffs ahead of his meeting with Modi. How significant do you think that is? Is this something that gives the market jitters?
Yeah, he had said already on the weekend from his Florida resort that by Thursday he would be announcing widespread reciprocal tariffs. So I think it's a follow-up on that. Now we have to wait and watch. Our weighted average tariffs, Vikram, are about 14%, which are on the higher side. We have given some concessions in the union budget, especially on the steel side, some metal side, some concessions on goods that US sends to India. But I would say this meeting is a broad brush meeting. There is the strategic partnership. There will be talk of defense. We are the biggest importer of defense goods in the world. Our annual defense expenditure is more than $80 billion. So expect some big bang, good high-tech defense equipment to be on offer. We saw in the Bangalore Aero Show the fifth and sixth generation stealth fighters from the US were competing against the Russian stealth fighters. So I'm hoping some of those goods will be available for India. On the energy side, we have moved on the privatization of nuclear energy, small scale nuclear reactors. The liability clause is being worked on. So expect something on the energy side. Then coming on to trade, the balance is clearly in India's favor. I think there will be pressure and India will offer, give us as much oil and gas as you can. Today, last year, Vikram, we imported about 62, 64 million barrels from the US. We
Yes.
can easily increase that and replace the Middle East crude with that. So I think there'll be some talk about that as well.
Yes.
And then, work on the broader strategic partnership.
So, like you said, larger brushstrokes this time. Ambassador Meera Shankar, do you agree with that? Are you expecting any significant breakthroughs on trade tariffs and market access? Or do you think this meeting is more about reaffirming past commitments? As far as the clarion call that Donald Trump has given through that note that he's put out about reciprocal tariffs, how much of a worry area should that be for India?
Look, first of all, I think that it's an opportunity to retouch base with the new administration, because this is an administration with a stronger mandate than during Trump's first term and in a hurry. So it's important to touch base with them and to see what the strategic partnership has achieved and what could be its future trajectory. How does the new Trump administration see the future trajectory of the India-US strategic partnership? I think that will be the most important aspect of the dialogue between the two leaders.
Sure.
And then, of course, from India's side, the US is a very important partner in the area of defense, defense technology, and also purchase of defense equipment, military exercises, working together in the Indo-Pacific. I think these will all be a core part of the discussions.
Yes.
We also want to lay emphasis on energy.
Yes.
Now that Trump has reversed the policy on renewable energy, the focus would probably be on whether India can take more fossil fuels from the US, and also on cooperation on small modular nuclear reactors.
Certainly.
And here it's not just India which needs to change its laws. We keep saying that India needs to change the liability law clause.
Yes.
And on the other hand, the US also still has clauses which prohibit US companies from producing nuclear reactors in any other country.
Sure.
So they can sell, but they cannot technologically cooperate to produce.
Yes.
So that also would require
But
change.
essentially, when it comes to the trade surplus, Ambassador, just for a moment, as far as, the surplus trade is concerned that India has enjoyed with the US over a long period of time. At this point,
very
Trump
small.
seems to sound, Trump wants to kind of say that, look, I want reciprocity in tariffs and I want trade to be at par. Is that something that he can push through, or is it something that Modi can push back?
Look, I think it's not possible strictly for countries to have, equal trade. We export as much as we import. That's not how the market operates. But also that this is looking at trade in goods and services. And our total two-way trade was a little less than $200 billion.
Yes.
So not a huge amount.
Yes.
And the trade surplus that India has enjoyed has been a relatively small one.
Right.
Broadly balanced trade. trade surplus varying from $20 billion to
Yes.
about $40 billion,
Yes.
mostly in the range of 20 to 30 billion. So
Yes.
that's not a huge trade surplus.
Certainly. But let me
And
take
the
that across to
average,
yes, but let me take that across to
one more
Arsh.
point, one more point, the average tariff on the top 30 goods that the US exports to India are between 5 and 10%.
Sure.
They're not very high, but
Right.
in sectors we have tariffs.
Right.
I think we have to deal with this, through a mixed policy of being able to stand firm where required and showing
Exactly.
flexibility where we can.
Exactly. Now, how much can India stand firm? Arsh Mogre, at a time that India wants to enlarge its economy, and we can do it by enlarging our exports. The US has been a good market for India. Now, if we have to expand that scope, especially when it comes to goods rather than services, how important a push is that for Mr. Modi at this point in time, considering that the tariff play is something that he'll have to convince Mr. Trump about, that perhaps we also need to kind of grow and give us a chance to grow that much more?
Yeah, thank you, Vikram. So honestly, I feel that Modi's meeting with Trump isn't just another diplomatic engagement. It's honestly an economic high wire act at a time when trade protectionism is intensifying, the energy markets are shifting, and all the global supply chains are in a flux. So while the headlines are on, the entire tariff issue, I think the reality is that most high-value imports from the US, we talk about crude oil, LNG, coal, diamonds, and aircraft, face minimal tariffs of around 0 to 7.5% in the budget, which came just weeks after President Trump came to office. Saw a major tariff rationalization, where we saw the custom average duty reduced from 11.65% to 10.66, which isn't just a concession, but it's honestly a strategic shift to enhance supply chain integration and manufacturing efficiency.
Sure.
Now, honestly, the US is not going to lower its custom duties. But what I feel is that in this meeting, you could see a lot of non-tariff measures that would be introduced. When I say non-tariff measures, I mainly focus on the regulatory harmonization, having mutual recognition of quality standards,
Yes.
easier visa norms for our diaspora, and a better market access in terms of our medicals, in terms of pharmaceuticals, electronics, and services.
Exactly.
Because in today's trade wars, non-tariff barriers matter just as much as tariffs.
Indeed. They do. And that's what I mean by expanding the scope of exports as far as India is concerned, and how much of a deal can be struck on that count. Ajay Bagga, this is going to be an important piece for the markets. So in terms of allaying fears of the markets and being able to kind of really enthuse the markets, what do you think needs to come out of this meeting?
Well, if we don't see any imposition of tariffs on India, that will be a very big positive for the markets. Second, what are the expectations? There is no FTA coming out of this meeting, but it could be announced at a high-powered committee with the top officials on both sides. It's set up to look at the route to signing of an FTA between India and the US. Third, closer defense ties, closer strategic ties. If you look at even in the Biden administration, we did make a lot of progress on the critical technologies and the emerging technologies front. The ICET was signed. There is an Indus-X treaty on the defense collaboration. We are talking about making aircraft engines along with GE and HAL collaborating on that.
Yes.
So I'm expecting some big bang, defense equipment of the highest technology to be offered. Something on the semiconductors side, something on immigration. I'm not expecting too much. He will be talking to his domestic audience. So,
yes, indeed.
I don't
And that make
expect too
America
much.
great again, that entire credo has been going very strong. So he'll have to balance it out, Mr. Trump would.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So don't
No,
expect
but
too
on this
much.
defense deal,
Yeah.
I just wanted to take that across to Ambassador Meera Shankar. At the top of the show, we had my colleague Madhav Das joining us from Washington, where he's hearing about the importance of a defense deal being cracked. How important is it for Trump to convince Mr. Modi to buy more defense goods from the US? And is that going to be the start of any possibility of India pushing its own agenda?
Look, I think President Trump in the phone call that he had with Modi mentioned, that India should buy more US defense equipment. So obviously it's high in his mind. And India, I'm told, has been looking at the possibility of buying, more maritime surveillance aircraft, which we have already purchased some numbers, but perhaps buying some more for maritime surveillance, missiles, armed drones. There are a range of technologies that we have been and equipment that could be on offer, but I don't see any deals as such being concluded in this visit. What you will get is probably agreement to continue discussing these issues, that there could be an offer that they will discuss the procurement of X or Y or even on tariffs, even if Trump issues an order on
Yes.
reciprocal tariffs.
Yes.
Is it going to be an enabling order?
Yes.
That is, the United States
yes.
would be able to impose reciprocal tariffs where required.
Yes.
Or because doing reciprocal tariffs with any and every country,
Yes.
I think is not going to be an easy task.
So it might be
my
counterproductive
sense
for the
is-
US as well, as much as he's pushing that agenda of making America great again. Arsh, do weigh in on this, because would that be problematic at some point where Donald Trump decides to do a reversal, and he's prone to do that? Would that be a beneficial thing for India at this stage, where he realizes that this could be extremely inflationary if he keeps pushing that agenda?
Right. Honestly, it would be inflationary. But you need to remember one thing. Currently, a lot of Indian exports already enjoy a cost arbitrage compared to the other exporting nations. When you compare our goods that exported from India, we don't have any tariff. I think it's about 3%, but from China, it's a 10% plus the additional that was there in section 232. So we already do enjoy a cost arbitrage. In terms of the inflationary expectations, honestly, the rupee has already depreciated. So when you look at the J. Marshall Lerner curve, a lot of India's exports would still be, like inelastic. They would
Yes.
still, be consumed in the US regardless of the prices. And I think President Trump had already warned this,
Yes.
that inflation is going to be an issue, but it's more of a short-term,
Yes.
pain for the longer-term gain.
That's
And
what
just the
he's
last thing,
indicating. Yes.
I think many a times we think of tariffs to be the end game. I think here he's using tariffs as a negotiation ploy
Right.
to realign the geopolitics.
Right.
So to
Yes,
ensure all
that's an
countries sit on
interesting
one table.
takeaway. From what you're saying, this is not so much about the economics of it, but it's a geopolitical play, and this is how he's trying to set the tone right when it comes to relations with key countries that America does business with. We'll see exactly what happens, but as we wrap up this discussion, it's quite clear that the Modi-Trump meeting carries both diplomatic weight and, of course, there are economic implications. Some takeaways are concrete, a reaffirmation of trade and defense cooperation. Of course, others remain in the realm of speculation, but we don't have too long to wait, thankfully. Will these promises translate into tangible policy shifts, or are we going to see a continuation of existing strategies? The next few months are going to tell us whether this meeting has been a pivotal moment or just another chapter in the evolving India-US relationship. But a big thank you to our esteemed panelists for joining us and sharing their insights, Ajay Bagga, Meera Shankar and Arsh Mogre. We'll, of course, continue tracking the impact of this high-profile meeting on global markets and diplomacy. But thank you for joining us tonight on India Tonight. We'll take a very quick breather, but on the other